Hello and welcome to my welcome to my woolly PhD. My name is Liz Scarf and this is a weekly vlog about what I've been currently thinking about and learning and making in my anthropology PhD, all about wool. And I've been off for a month, so I took a month off of the PhD and the vlog after sort of an intense 4 months in the field in Iceland, and I'm now back home in Australia and I'll be here for another 3 months, and then I'm going back to Iceland for another 4 months, which is going to include lambing season, which I'm so excited about. Anyway, let's get into it today. So I have been learning about and thinking about an interesting take on globalization this week. Globalization and wool was a really interesting way to study and think about globalization, so more broadly. But two readings I want to recommend. They're both really inaccessible though, but this is a pseudo-academic vlog, so academia has accessibility issues. Anyway, okay, that's another video. Right, but the introductory chapter in the book, The Anthropology of Globalisation by Inda and Rosaldo, I think that's really good. And The Condition of Postmodernity, an inquiry into the origins of cultural change by David Harvey. Or on that one, honestly, I would look for like summary articles or some YouTube videos just to get you started. I don't know if he's done any podcasts. But yeah, that could be an entry point into his thinking about cultural change, which is super interesting, actually. So anyway, globalization, it's a complex concept, but that's probably, most concepts are complex, I guess, right? But a fairly standard definition is that it's the increase in the global flow of sort of capital, people, commodities, media and ideologies, sort of mediated by communications and transport infrastructure and technologies. Now, David Harvey, which basically just means because we can travel quicker and we can communicate, that's cute, communicate quicker, it increases movement of things, ideas, monies, resources, power, all kinds of things, people, including non-human people, commodities, things that aren't commodities, not everything's a commodity, shock. So anyway, David Harvey, so he's a professor of anthropology and geography, and he conceptualizes globalization as a time-space compression, which I just think is super interesting, right? So he argues that capitalism constantly revolutionizes the speed and scope of movement. And so like of goods and of people, of information, ideas, capital, like we were saying before, but that this effectively shrinks the world and it fundamentally sort of restructures how we experience space and time. So if you try to imagine it, right, like certainly in a privileged global position, right, someone who has been on a plane, and say like in Australia, we can travel from one side of the country to the other on a plane in 4 hours now, which takes us, if you drive, 3 days. If you, I don't know, went by camel, I don't know if it's a few weeks, right? Anyway, if you imagine like the idea of traveling to Europe or whatever that is now, right, would be so different. And so the concept of space and is so different now to what it would have been 100 years ago, 50 years ago, right? Where you might spend 6 weeks, 2 months on an intercontinental steamer to get from, Australia to Europe. Makes you just experience space and time very differently. So, what once took months to traverse in terms of distance now takes hours, and communication that required weeks now happens instantly, right? So think the shift from letters to the internet, right? And this is, it's been a very short space of time, very, very rapid changes in the speed of communication and mobility, right? So this compression manifests in lots of different ways, right? So we think about financial markets that are operating in real time globally, then also production chains that span continents, right? And this sort of just-in-time delivery, and, you know, thinking about Amazon's impact, and of course lots of people who kind of really try to avoid it now for what they think of as activist or social change reasons. And then also how cultural products circulate almost instantaneously, right? So thinking about social media posts that go viral. So geographical distance becomes less of a barrier to sort of economic and social relations. Now for Harvey, this space-time compression is driven by capitalism's desire to overcome spatial barriers to accumulation, right? That I could accumulate more and this distance would be less and less of an issue, and that I could speed up turnover time. So basically those driving capitalism can make more money, open new markets. So it's not a neutral technological evolution, right, or an inevitability, but absolutely a process that reflects specific power relations and economic imperatives, right? And therefore, of course, also means that globalization, it's not an even process across the globe. Different places are globalized more, different places benefit, and people and entities, actors, right, benefit from globalization more, and others suffer from it, right? So it's not an evenly distributed or evenly experienced process, right? It of course globalization of course has very local impacts, which is often what anthropologists will study. And it's one of the things I think about in my fieldwork a lot, right, is how is globalization and events happening in other parts of the world impacting on the daily lives of sort of fibre crafters in Iceland. And it absolutely is in very, very tangible ways. And it's not mysterious to people. They will say, oh yeah, well this event happened and so then I did this in my business. Or, well, we now do this thing because of what happened in this country here, or you know, this person who moved here, they introduced this idea of blah, blah, and so now we're all doing this. So it's very, very alive in very tangible ways. And this idea of this space-time compression also makes me think about how the slow fashion and sort of slow life movements are attempts to sort of decompress space-time, right? An attempt to counter the sort of rabidness of capitalization. I'm having such a tricky day with words today. Is it just a matter of practice? I don't know. Anyway, not capitalization, capitalism. Anyway, there's so many different ways this kind of, just thinking about this little intersection, right, of globalization as space-time compression and wool and knitting. Like just lots of different things. One of the things that really catches my attention though is how it makes unintentional activists out of knitters, right? So just a little, it's a relevant tangent, but backtrack or something. You know, so second wave feminism, right, really poo-pooed the home crafts of women, including things like knitting, that they were practices of oppression that were part of a complex barrier to women joining the sort of out-of-home workforce. It's gross summary there, but the third wave feminism instead actually highlighted these home crafts as forms of skilled labour and economic contribution that should be made more visible, right? And craftivism emerged from this. And craftivism, if you haven't heard of it before, it's a portmanteau, a joining together of the words craft and activism, right? But this, however, kind of prized activist crafters, but less so like the granny knitter, as they were kind of, what I've seen them kind of referred to, right? So what I really love thinking about the granny knitter though, but let's just really say like the everyday knitter who just likes knitting stuff, it's how as the world changes around them, in particular globalization and this space-time compression, it turns their making practice into an anti-capitalism and anti-globalization activity, right? I'm not quite sure why this grabs me so much. I have to think about it more. But there's something about how we can continue to do the same thing in our lives, but the way in which the world changes around us over time recontextualizes our activity. So here I am just like, oh, I just like to knit sweaters, la la la, and now I'm an activist, you know, like now this is like a statement, now I'm part of the slow fashion movement, apparently. I didn't mean to be, but blah, blah. I'm saying I don't actually literally mean me. I just mean the knitter, right? And the psychotherapist in me then starts thinking about how this impacts our identity, our sense of self, place, contribution, how other people's relationship to us and our practices changes. You go from maybe being just kind of a bit boring introvert to now like something cool and cutting edge. Anyway. Then it also makes me think about how we can then use these different contextualizations to support moral identity. Like for me, I have been moving away from plastics and superwash yarn, right? And this builds my moral identity as an environmentally conscious crafter maker. It can make me also feel justified in buying a spinning wheel and a drum carder and a dyeing rig. Does this really mean I'm having less environmental impact? Or I can buy, artisanal or like bespoke yarn from like some mini mill across the world. It's got these rare breeds. Yes, I did do this. It's globalization, absolutely, being able to buy yarn from an international yarn producer, right? Does it all have less environmental impact? Probably not, actually. Certainly not in the short term. Maybe in the long term. Not the buying wool from overseas. The spinning my own yarn, local fleeces, that could do. Anyway, it's enough. So many tangents that this kind of thinking or inquiry fires off. I would love to hear what it makes you think about as well. Anyway, I am chewing on this a lot. It could really be like a big part of the PhD. I'm not sure. We'll see how we go. It does certainly, I notice I get really, really interested in it. So I'm always trying to notice, what do I get really interested in? That's a good thing to focus on in the study. I just thought I dropped all my stitches. What have I been making? Okay, so I finished a pair of mittens, which I can't show you because I gave them away already. They're for my stepdaughter and she loves them, which is great. She said, oh, they're so edgy. I love them. I don't know, I'll take it. Edgy mittens. She was kind enough to not mention the issue with the thumb gusset placement. Anyway, you can see a picture on my Instagram if you're dying to see them. It is at Liz Making With. Anyway, it's from the book. I did them. They're from the book Icelandic Mittens by Gudrun, Hannele, Henttinen, which I've shared before. And I was making her the Freya, which she picked. They're gloves, right? But I did not have time to do gloves. And also my row gauge was so far out. I think I was using yarn that was too big, although my row gauge was fine. A stitch gauge. Anyway, so I thought if I got to here and just went, oh, I can't, they'll be massive. So anyway, she's got mittens. Mittens are great. They're lovely. And I made them with this Hjonaband yarn from Uppspuni, mini mill in Iceland. And it's wool from an older sheep, which is pretty cute. And yes, and I just noticed my bookmark. Did you know about the Icelandic Wool Week that is happening? It happens every 2 years. It's happening this year, 27th of September to the 3rd of October. Quite a shame that it clashes with the Shetland Wool Week. But anyway, I might go. I want to go. It's not in my schedule of fieldwork trips, but I feel like I should go. Like, it's kind of important. It happens in my field site area in the south of Iceland. And so I'm going to try to go if I can get the funds together. Are you going to go? Maybe. Anyway, they've got a Wool Week hat and it's a free pattern download. So even if you're not going, you could get a free cute, it's not even cute, it's really cool. It's quite complex. Anyway, this is the website to go to. The internet might try to translate it for you. It won't work if it's a translated URL. It's www.ullarvikan.is. ULLARVIKAN.is. I'll put it in the show notes. Anyway, just, if you happen to be in the area, So that's the wool week thing. Okay, where am I up to? What have I been making? Okay, so that was the mittens, right? Then when I finished those because they were for a Christmas gift, and then I had nothing to knit. So I cast on this diaphanous shawl, which means shiny and see-through. This is for my daughter in a mohair silk that I got some Urth Yarns, I think URTH. Anyway, it's quite lovely. She calls it a brown. I think it's a mauve. It's a dusty mauve. I don't know if we can see it properly. It's quite lovely, and I really love mohair, but I realised when I started knitting this, I've never actually knit with only mohair. I always hold it together with something. What an experience. I will not be doing it again, not anytime soon. It'll be like childbirth, right? You're kind of at the time you swear you'll never do it again, and then a few years later you're like, yeah, let's do that. Anyway, I have to start the lace section now. Oh, it's a shawl scarf thing. It's called it's the Cloudy Skies scarf by Sweater Babe. She's got a huge number of patterns. I had never come across her before. It's a huge world, this knitting world. Anyway, I have to start the lace section now, so I'm kind of procrastinating on that because, you know, lace work is a lot of attention. But yeah, it's quite lovely, actually. And so I started that in Europe thinking I really needed something to knit on the plane, and I usually do knit a lot on planes. I did no knitting on the planes on the way back. I slept a lot. I did watch a few movies. I often don't because I want to sleep better. Anyway, slept quite well. It was a good trip back. I have had a really good jet lag experience. I think it's because there is so much sunlight here. And gee, it's hot. 45-degree day here in Melbourne, and lots of Victoria is up in flames and scary. So let's talk about knitting instead. The other thing, now that I am home and reunited with my stash, and yes, it was an emotional moment for us both, I've started a project I've been planning for a couple of years now, I guess. I bought this very gorgeous, I should have got the skeins, Polwarth yarn from Tarndie, right, which is a local Victorian Polwarth stud. And I bought it a couple of years ago at a craft yarn market with the intent to make a red cardigan. It looks a little orange, I think, on the screen. It's more red than this. It's more like into a sort of a soft cherry red, actually. Very lovely. Maybe it looks a bit better. More red there. Anyway, so I did lots of mohair swatches with different kinds of colours of mohair to get at the fabric that I wanted, and because I wanted to make a red cardigan with it. So I have cast on, God, it looks so orange. It's really, how do I make it look less orange? Maybe it does when it contrasts there. Anyway, it's not, it's kind of a darker cherry red. So this is the Rota Cardigan by Anna Sjösvärd. Don't know how to pronounce the last name, sorry. I love the fabric that it's making. It is, it's really squishy, kind of not thin, but it's not thick for something so squishy, because this is so squishy. I think it must be a woolen spun. It's such a springy yarn, actually. It's lovely. I didn't add mohair to the collar. Oh, so it's a steeked cardigan, right? So we're going to cut it down there later. I didn't add mohair to the collar because I don't like mohair on my neck. And it makes a slightly different colour. And so maybe I'll do it on the cuffs and other ribbing to create a look out of it, or maybe I won't. I'll see when I get there. Anyway, so I'm really enjoying this knit because I love the fabric that it is making, and it just reminds me to only knit things I really, really love, because it is such a joy. It's actually a really different experience when I'm knitting something I'm a bit meh about. I don't know. Anyway, I'm very happy to be knitting something I'm loving. Yeah, I'm keen to get a couple of cardigans done before I head back to Iceland, because I didn't have any there, and I really kind of missed them, and they would have been useful. And I don't have any proper warm cardigans, so I'm on a cardigan mission. Yeah, though 45-degree days is not conducive to knitting, but that's okay. I've got other things I have to be getting on with. Right, on that note, I should go. Thanks for watching, and for your comments and your thoughts and your own craft practices and interest in wool. It's very cool. Yeah, see you next week. Bye.